Why do you feel so completely exhausted, burned out, and drained despite living in the most technologically advanced era in human history? The shocking truth is that your prehistoric ancestors actually worked significantly less, slept much more, and enjoyed vastly more free time than you do today. Think about your average week. Your alarm goes off at 6:30 a.m. You drag yourself out of bed, commute through heavy traffic or crowded public transit, and spend 8 to 9 hours staring at a glowing rectangle. After work, you commute back, try to squeeze in a workout, cook dinner, do the laundry, and answer a few late-night emails from your boss. By the time you finally collapse into bed, you realize you have practically no time left for yourself. And the next morning, the cycle starts all over again. We accept this exhausting reality because we believe a specific narrative. We tell ourselves that this is the price of civilization. We believe that we are at the absolute pinnacle of human leisure, saved by technology from the brutal, never-ending labor of the prehistoric past. When you picture a caveman, what do you see? You probably imagine a filthy, desperate, starving human dressed in tattered animal skins, constantly running away from saber-toothed tigers. You imagine a life of pure panic, where every waking second is spent desperately searching for a single berry or a scrap of meat just to survive one more day. The famous philosopher Thomas Hobbes famously described the lives of early humans as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. But there is a massive problem with this picture. It is completely scientifically wrong. In the 1960s, a profound shift happened in the field of anthropology. Researchers decided to actually measure how modern hunter-gatherer societies, people who live in environments and social structures very similar to our ancient ancestors, spent their time. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years living with the Kung-San people in the harsh, unforgiving environment of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. Since they lived in a desert, scientists assumed these people must work from dawn until dusk just to find enough calories to stay alive. When Lee actually calculated the hours they spent acquiring food, the results shocked the modern world. The Kung-San spent an average of just 15 to 20 hours a week foraging and hunting. That is a 2 to 3 hour workday. Even in a landscape that looks barren to a modern city dweller, these people easily found enough highly nutritious nuts, roots, and meat to comfortably feed their entire camp. This was not an isolated incident. Similar studies were done with the Hadza people in Tanzania and indigenous groups in the Amazon rainforest. The data remained consistent. Finding food, building temporary shelters, and maintaining tools took, at most, about 3 to 5 hours a day. In 1966, at a famous symposium called Man the Hunter, anthropologist Marshall Salins presented a groundbreaking paper. He coined a term for these early human groups, the original affluent society. Salins argued that hunter-gatherers were wealthy not because they had a lot of stuff, but because their needs were extremely simple, and those needs were easily met. So, if an ancient human only worked for 3 hours a day, what did they do with the rest of their time? The answer might make you a little jealous. They rested. They slept long hours, completely untethered from the artificial demands of an alarm clock. They took long naps in the afternoon heat. They spent hours upon hours just sitting around the campfire, talking, joking, and telling stories. They made music. They carved art. They spent an enormous amount of time simply playing with their children and bonding with their tribe. Imagine having an extra 5 or 6 hours every single day where you had absolutely nothing on your to-do list. No emails to check, no social media feeds to scroll, and no guilt about not being productive. That was the standard human experience for over 200,000 years. You might be wondering, if food was so easy to get, why didn't they work an extra 5 hours to stockpile more food? Why not build bigger huts or gather more possessions? Because to a nomadic hunter-gatherer, possessions are not wealth. Possessions are a massive burden. If you have to pack up and move your camp every few weeks to follow the animal herds or the changing seasons, the absolute last thing you want is extra stuff to carry. Our ancestors didn't hoard resources because the forest itself was their pantry. When they were hungry, they went to the forest. When they were full, they stopped working. There was no concept of working today to earn an imaginary currency for a retirement that is 40 years away. So, how did we lose this paradise of free time? How did we go from a 15-hour work week to the relentless modern grind? The disaster happened about 12,000 years ago. It is called the agricultural revolution. Humans discovered that if they planted seeds in the ground and domesticated animals, they could produce far more calories per acre than hunting and gathering. We thought we had conquered nature, but as the historian Yuval Noah Harari famously points out, we didn't domesticate wheat, wheat domesticated us. Farming is incredibly difficult, back-breaking labor. To grow crops, you have to clear forests, dig irrigation trenches, plow the soil, pull weeds under the burning sun, and harvest the grain before it rots. Suddenly, humans were working from sunrise to sunset, and because farming allowed us to produce a surplus of food, populations exploded. We could no longer pack up and move. We had to stay put to guard our fields and our massive grain silos. This led to the invention of fences, borders, and land ownership. Because we now had stored wealth, we had to build armies to protect it from thieves. We invented taxes to pay the armies. We invented kings to collect the taxes. In our attempt to make life easier and more secure by farming, we accidentally trapped ourselves in an endless cycle of labor. We traded 3 hours of casual foraging for 12 hours of brutal field work, simply to support the massive, top-heavy societies we had accidentally created. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. We moved out of the fields and into the factories. The invention of the clock meant that human life was no longer governed by the rising and setting of the sun, but by the relentless ticking of machinery. Your time was literally converted into money. Today, we have robotic vacuums, washing machines, self-driving cars, and artificial intelligence. Economists in the 1930s predicted that by the 21st century, technology would be so advanced that we would only have to work 15 hours a week. Ironically, they were predicting that technology would return us to the exact same work schedule as our caveman ancestors. But it didn't happen. Instead of working less, we invented more complex jobs. We invented the hustle culture. We turned our hobbies into side businesses. The biggest difference between Paleolithic work and modern work is not the physical effort, it is the psychology of the done state. When a caveman successfully hunted a deer or gathered a basket of roots, the work was objectively finished. The tribe ate, and the brain completely powered down. The stress cycle was closed. In the modern world, your work is never actually done. There is always another email, another project, another quarter, another promotion to chase. Your smartphone ensures that your workplace follows you into your living room, into your bed, and onto your vacations. Your Paleolithic brain, which evolved to work hard for a few hours and then completely rest, is being forced to run a low-level permanent stress program 24/7. It is like leaving a car engine running in the driveway for 50 years. Eventually, the engine burns out. We cannot abandon civilization and go back to living in caves. We like modern medicine, indoor plumbing, and the internet. But we can change how we value our time by understanding our evolutionary biology. The modern obsession with infinite productivity is a historical anomaly. For 95% of human history, your worth was not tied to how much you produced, how many hours you ground away at a desk, or the size of your asset portfolio. You were valuable simply because you were part of the tribe. The next time you feel guilty for taking a nap, for staring out a window, or for spending a Sunday doing absolutely nothing productive, remind yourself that you are not being lazy. You are simply practicing the oldest, most natural human tradition in existence. Your brain was not built for the endless corporate grind. It was built for the 15-hour week. It was built to work, to survive, and then, most importantly, to stop. You do not have to earn your right to rest. It is literally written into your DNA.